Okay, in this video we're going to be talking about using our BYOD program, the Bring Your Own Device program, to promote active learning, or how it's like how active learning and BYOD kind of go together. So we'll be talking about some principles and then we'll show some examples. But again, remember, as we've mentioned before, when we go through examples, these are samples. It's not saying this is how you must do it, but these might give you some ideas of what you can do in your classroom. First, let's talk about what is active learning. When we talk about that, well, the idea is that we want to focus responsibility for learning on the students. See, we want them to be doing the learning. Teaching should result in learning, and so we want them to take the responsibility for learning. We don't want them just to sit passively waiting for the teacher. This is what students tend to do, though. They tend to just sit back and wait to see what we're going to tell them to do. If they have a problem, they wait for us to fix the problem. If they have a question, they wait for us to figure out that they have a question. If they need more instruction, they wait for us to tell them what it is. Basically, the students wait for us to do things for them. We want them to get out of this from being passive. We want them to instead actively acquire the knowledge and skills that they need, that they're going to take the active role, they're going to take the initiative. In some cases, this takes a problem-solving approach. Rather than telling them steps to do or telling them a lot of things to do, we give them a problem and then allow them to figure out ways to solve it. This is going to involve higher order thinking skills. You see, that we're not talking about doing this just for them to memorize facts. They are going to need to memorize facts. I'm not against that. But we want them to then think beyond those facts of how to apply them and so on. So active learning leads more to these higher order thinking skills. So then why is active learning important? Well, there's several reasons. For one thing, it's more effective for retention. I mean, you think back, what are the things that you remember from the things that you've studied, from your classes? A lot of times it's things that you were actively doing. If it's in elementary school or middle school, it's like when you did some project, when you had to make something or you did some project or a science project, you tend to remember a lot about that rather than the things that you sat and listened to. Active learning also involves learning something to teach others, and so if you are involved in teaching, like you think about Sunday school, for example. If you've taught a Sunday school class, you know that you learned the material a whole lot better than the people do who are listening to you. You want them to learn, but you learn a whole lot more. And you remember that. So it's more effective for retention when you're actively involved in learning. It's also more effective for application, because if you're teaching it properly, you are enabling them to see how their learning applies to specific problems. And you're training them in essential learning skills. Realize that when students go to college, they're not going to be able to be passive. Their teachers expect them to learn, to take an active role, to go out and read, to go out and study, to find answers to problems, to talk with others. They expect them to do this. Well, we need to be training students to take this more active role. So now, let me give you some examples. And as I said before, these are examples. I'm not saying you have to do these things or for these lessons, but these are ways that you might use this, and you might be able to use technology in these ways. Now, I've been teaching a class in Microsoft Office for the last few years, and the approach I've been taking, I have a textbook on Microsoft Office. The approach I've been taking basically is to tell the students, or the book does it, but it has them go step by step how to do things. It tells them, for example, if you're going to create a chart, for example, in Microsoft Word, it will show you, okay, take these menu items, click on this menu, here's how to label the axes of the chart, here's how to make the chart a particular size, here's how to change the type of the chart. And basically the textbook just tells them do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. Okay. But now I want to show you the type of thing that we would do with them, that we would how they would do this traditionally, how I've done this in the past. Okay, so we want to take this data and make a chart. So first what you do is put your cursor here in A1, click and hold and drag the information that you want to be in the chart. So it's highlighted like this. Now click the menu that says Insert, go over here to Column because we want a chart, so we go to Column, pull down there, and we want this 3D column. So click there. Then we have our chart. Now we need to label the axes, because when you look at this you think, okay, you can probably figure out that these are years down here, but what are these numbers up here? What does that mean? So we need to label them. So let's go here, you click on Layout up here, and here we have Axis Titles. Pull that down, and let's select the horizontal axis. That's the axis that's going across the bottom. So let's put a title below it, pops up like that, and then we'll type school year and press enter. Now we need a label for this axis here, for what these numbers mean. Go back to axis titles, primary vertical axis title, and we're going to have one that is rotated. That is, that it displays sideways. And you see what it looks like there. So we're going to type, just start typing enrollment. Press enter. We have that. Now it's going to help if we have a title for the whole chart. So go here to chart title. Above the chart, and then type high school enrollment. Press enter. Now this chart is a little bit small, so let's make it bigger. So put your cursor here on one of the corners until the cursor looks like this double-headed arrow. Then just drag it up until it's larger. Okay. Now let's say that we want to change the chart type. We want to change the colors maybe. So click Design up here at the top, and let's say we want to make it so that it will print on black and white. So here is a design, a style that is black and white. So I'm going to click that. So now it will come out, it will print on a black and white printer. So that's how you do the chart. But now let's see how we might do this from a problem-solving perspective, rather than from me or the book telling them do this. If we take a problem-solving approach to it, what I might do is I might give them some data, some sample data, and then I might give them a sample of a result desired. For example, I want you to take this data and produce a result that's going to look similar to this. And you can do it in a number of different ways. Here are resources that are provided for you. Here are books. There are videos available to show you how to make a chart. There are websites you can go to search for, and I can provide those for you. But basically then it's up to you to figure out how to make a chart. And what you find is that when students do this, they remember it better, rather than just sitting and watching or listening to you. So for example, I might give them this data and say, okay, here you have a number of school years, you have enrollment and grades. Okay, so I give them this spreadsheet, and then I might give them a sample here. Here's a sample of elementary school enrollment, bar graphs, to show them, okay, what are the enrollments in those grade levels. And I might say, okay, I want you to take the data I gave you. Here's a sample graph. I want you to make a chart that looks somewhat like this, but be creative. Okay, you see what I've done here. I've labeled the axes, I've put a title on it, but you figure out and you learn how to produce something like this, rather than my giving them step by step what to do. And I believe this is going to help them. They will remember how to do it better, and they will be able to be more creative. They will be able to use Microsoft Word or Google Docs or Pages with their Apple devices, whatever software they choose to use. As long as they can produce the result, they're fine. And so that's a problem-solving approach to this that would enable them to use their technology, but it's an active learning approach rather than passively just telling them step by step, here's how you do everything. Okay, that's one example. Let's think now about geometry. I pick on geometry because I've taught it for a number of years. And so one of the things that you study in geometry is principles of parallel lines. And one of the areas there is, how do you prove that two lines are parallel? Let's say you have two lines and then you have a transversal. You've got a line that cuts across those two lines. Well, how do you prove that the lines are parallel? Well, previously what we would do, we would just tell the students, here are the postulates or the theorems that you use to prove two lines are parallel. You have the corresponding angles postulate, you have alternate interior angles, you have consecutive interior angles, you have alternate exterior angles. You have these basically 4 ways to do it. And so what we would do is we would say, okay, corresponding angles. What that means is that when corresponding angles, when you have that situation, when the corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Consecutive interior angles, when they are supplementary, then the lines are parallel. When alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So we go through these and show them examples and so on. But another way to teach them the same thing with an active learning approach might be something like this. I might tell them, okay, there are 4 ways to prove that two lines cut by a transversal are parallel. I want you to go on the web and find those 4 ways. Find 4 ways to do this, and then I want you to use your device to draw and explain each one of them. So you draw a brief diagram and you submit that to me. So this is an active learning thing. Rather than telling them what the postulates are, they're finding them out and demonstrating them. And the students will learn them. They'll be able to remember them better, I believe, this way. Okay, let's take one more example. An example from economics and history. Okay, let's say that you are wanting them to learn about deficits and debts spending. This is an applicable thing for us now. Particularly on deficits and debt in the Eurozone. And so you want them to see what has happened to countries in the Eurozone with annual deficit, with annual debt, and then the accumulating deficits that they have. So you provide a lecture and you tell them about it. But if, let's say, you want to do it active learning using the technology that the students have, well, here is a website that you can go to that will demonstrate some of these principles. It's from Google, but it will show them these things. So let's see what this website looks like. Alright, now we have this graph here. This is on Google, and I can give you the website later. But what we have here on this axis, the government surplus deficit as a percentage of GDP. This is the annual surplus or deficit, phrased as a percent of their overall GDP. Across the bottom here is government debt as a percentage of their GDP. That is the cumulative debt. Not just this is what they do one year, this is their total debt over a number of years. And what you have here is you can click on this button here and it starts going, and you'll notice down here at the bottom it has years. And as you follow along, you'll notice the years go up and it will show you some information about the relationship between the government surplus or deficit and then the overall debt as a percentage of the GDP. So let's watch this and see what happens as we start along. You notice I have United Kingdom. You could choose a number of different countries, but we have the United Kingdom. Greece is going to show up shortly. So we're starting in 1995, so let's watch what happens. As you see, now we see Greece coming in here in the year 2000. And you see how things happen. But now notice what happens right along there in 2007, 2008. All of a sudden, both of those lines take a sharp drop down and to the right, meaning their deficit is a negative number over here on this side became higher. Notice that it went here as in 2009 that this was 11.5% of their GDP, a deficit of 11.5% of their GDP, which then resulted as a total 67.8% down here, total debt. But notice that here in 2009, Greece had their deficit was 15.6. We saw that over here, 15.6% of their GDP was an annual deficit, and they had 129.7% of their GDP was debt, their total debt. So you see that here in 2007, 2008, 2009, things really changed drastically for both of these countries. But this helps to visualize that. Okay, after we viewed that, then we can follow up and ask them, okay, what happened in late 2007, 2008 to cause that drastic change that you see? When you see those chart numbers move, what happened then? Well, instead of telling them what happened, have them do some research, have them look that up, have them find that on the web. What happened along that time frame? Also, you'll notice that Greece doesn't even show up on this graph until the year 2000. So you ask them, why doesn't Greece show up? Again, don't tell them. Have them find it out. Have them do some research to see why Greece doesn't appear. The reason is that Greece wasn't a member of the Eurozone until 2000, but instead of telling them, have them find that out. So these are 3 examples, some ways that you might integrate active learning and the BYOD program. Okay, so let me make some key points here about some observations. First, notice that this is device independent. Okay, none of the things that I set up here say, okay, you have to have a Windows machine or you have to have a Mac or something. It's, okay, I'm interested in the results. You can use your Mac, you can use your iPhone, you can use your Windows, you can use whatever and find these same answers. So it's device independent. It's also not tied to specific apps. So in the Microsoft Office thing, I'm changing the name of the course to Office Applications because I want them to see. You need a graph in your paper? You can do that with Google Docs. You can do it with Pages. You can do it with Word. There are a lot of different ways you can do it. So we're not looking at a specific app, and we're allowing the students to find the answers. Instead of just telling them the answer, they find it out. And it's a focus on open-ended answers. Okay, if it's just telling them a specific answer, sometimes it's quicker just to do it that way. But even there, the students will learn it better if they find it out themselves. But more of a focus is an open-ended answer. Okay, so that, for example, with the geometry and the parallel lines, yes, there are the 4 specific postulates and theorems about parallel lines, but the idea of drawing them and illustrating them, they might look different from one student to the other. So you want to see, okay, just so they have the main ideas. So you think about open-ended answers rather than just factual knowledge. Okay, now you might be thinking, okay, this is going to take longer, and it will. I mean, some of these things you could just tell them through a lecture or tell them what they need to know very quickly. But remember, we're not here to see how quickly can we tell them things. We're here to see how well can the students learn the material. And those might be two different things. I mean, if you're just talking about getting things across quickly, you know that you can talk a lot faster. And, okay, you get the information, but people don't have time to understand it. So you need to think, okay, maybe it takes a bit longer here, but if the students are learning it better, that's to the advantage. Okay. Now, just some ideas about implementing this. Okay, don't try to think, okay, how can I change my entire course to do this? Don't think about that right off the bat. Just think, okay, here's a lesson that I can try this with. Here's a particular lesson I can do. Here's a couple of lessons I can do, so that you're doing it on a piecemeal basis, just as selected lessons. This is just for your time. Rather than you having to think about redoing your entire course, just pick out individual lessons first. Then, as you get more comfortable with it, you'll be able to do more lessons. As you go into future years, you'll be able to do more lessons. Learn from your mistakes. Okay, you try a lesson and it doesn't work out and there are problems. Don't just say, okay, forget about technology. I'm just going to go back to the way I've always done it. Don't give up. Instead, think, okay, what went wrong? How can I make this better? How can I change this? How can I improve this? Ask me for suggestions. Okay, that's what I'm here for. If you say, you know, I think such and such would be a good topic for the students to use their technology, but I'm not sure how to do it, okay, tell me about it. Say, here's what I want to accomplish. And then I can come up with ideas to help you. And whether it's a lesson plan, whether it's particular apps that you can use, but I'll be glad to do that. That's what I'm here for, so please ask me for suggestions. So, if you have any questions about this, be sure and email me at the email address there. I hope this is helpful. I hope you'll be able to start having the students be more active in their learning.